100 years from now, none of us will be here. None of us. Maybe a couple of babies that haven't developed memory yet. But 100 years from now, we will no longer be here. The end will come for us. We don't know exactly when, but it will come. And we're starting to look around us and see the end of the world that we sort of grew up in, you and I. And even those of mature years among us also took it for granted that things would go along as normal. But it didn't. And we see the erosion of the Western world all around us. All around us. It's happening, and it's disconcerting. Indeed, it's sad. But it should never steal our joy and our faith in Jesus Christ, and we will hold to that faith because we have one life. You and I have one life and one chance to show the Lord that we love him, that we have received the truth of what he's revealed to us. What is hidden or veiled, or crypto is the Greek word, which is where we get the word cryptic, is revealed, apocalypto. That means revealed. He reveals it. He reveals the truth and the way of life for us. We have one chance, but then we have one main responsibility. You and I have one responsibility above all others, is to allow Jesus to save our soul, to allow him to work in us, his grace and his mercy. We have one chance to do that. One chance. It's this life. There is no second chance. There is no other life. It is one. It is one, which makes everything very dramatic and very interesting and beautiful, and all at once, something worth living well, or trying and striving. And the spiritual battle that we are in is beautiful in itself. The salvation of our own soul is a priority number one. Of course, we love others, so we want them to be saved as well, and to be continually saved. It's not just a one and done thing. It is somewhere where we continually surrender to Jesus and ask for his strength and his grace. As we look around us, though, too, we see mass attendance cut in half in general, and people are still walking their dogs and feeding their bodies and going to gas stations where there's a lot more germs sitting around, and also grocery stores. A lot more germs there, too. Does everyone buy the product they pick off the shelf every single time? But Mass, it's so hard somehow to get back into it. So hard because we were looking for an excuse. And if we're looking for an excuse, any excuse will do. But you and I will not do that. And we care about them, those who have made those choices. We love them. And when we go to barbecues and surrounded by Catholics no longer practicing their faith, we love them and we should be concerned. It should hit us every once in a while in order to prompt us into action and maybe words that will help them. And we can pray to the Lord, Lord, I love them. I'm not indifferent to them. I'm not indifferent to them. I care about them, and I want to care about them the way you do. And so use me. I am your instrument in this time. Lord, use me any way you wish. Any way you wish. Because I'm living this for you. It's all for you, Jesus. And that is the all-in kind of yoke that our Lord describes. This is yoke, Y-O-K-E, not Y-O-L-K. Why is he talking about eggs? No, it's a yoke for oxen. That's the yoke he's talking about. And this is for two animals. So he says, my yoke is easy and my burden light. There will always be burdens in this life, but the heavy burden is the burden of sin. The burden of being away from God. That is a burden. That is a heavy, heavy burden. Some people may stay away and seem to have spiritual reserves that they're living on. Western world is kind of living on a little bit of that right now, but it will expend itself and they'll end up cheating, and in the end, it will not be good. You and I must hold to that faith, hang on to that faith. Use me, Lord, as your instrument in these situations, because I've yoked myself to you. It's not yokes and it's not burdens. It's one yoke and one burden that's light, all in for Jesus or not. Half measures are not admitted to the Lord. That's a wild thing, and it's true. I'm telling you, it's true. There's no time for something that's not true right now. We have no time. It's one chance to preach the truth. And even if you try to help others as well, coming back to the Lord, and we should, if they don't respond, it's kind of like a parent. There's so many parents here, and you know the frustration it is when you're trying to get your child to make the right decisions, and many times, or certain children, just won't make them, and it frustrates you, and you're like, but you're trying. That's a good place to be because you're trying, and you've tried. That's the same with the gospel message, too. We can offer, we can give the truth in love as well. It doesn't mean that they will automatically believe, automatically accept the word, and automatically live it. That won't always happen. We cannot make them. I've had to learn this as a priest, as you preach or tell people the truth, and they won't do it, and you just realize, well, I've tried, and they have their decisions, but I will still try. It's worth that struggle. It's worth it. Their soul is worth it. Jesus died for it. There is a sense for you and I to hang on to the truth and to the faith in these times where things seem to erode around us, and we're kind of headed towards a certain end of what we've grown up with. And yes, don't let it steal your joy or your peace or your faith. Hold on to the truth. Hold on to the faith. You and I can do that. With God's grace, we will. We will with all confidence because we have yoked ourselves to Jesus, and his grace is powerful. There even could be a miracle of grace that changes the entire culture around in one moment. That has precedence in the world. Just remember Constantine in the Roman Empire and various other times. So it's possible, but it probably won't. We'll see. We'll go forward, of course, praying, working, and hoping. But at the same time, we will hold on to that faith. Hold on to it with all your gusto, all of your interior and exterior strength. And don't let any soft morals come on in, or soft little things. And don't imitate your neighbors when they start to let go of the faith. Don't do it. Hang on to it, hold that faith. And I'll tell you a story of some people who did this. I was at an ordination about a week and a half ago for Father Matthew Miller, a great new priest in our Diocese of Duluth. But the bishop there, Bishop Andrew Cousins, gave a homily. When he was studying in Rome for his doctorate, he went to help St. Teresa of Calcutta's sisters in Belarus. That's Mother Teresa's order, and they have a house there in Belarus in one of the big cities. And he was sent to kind of celebrate masses in different villages. He was brought to one particular village, though, that had maybe 15 houses in the village, very small. And he was greeted by one of the elderly priests there, and the elderly priest was telling him a story about the village and their Catholicism, because everyone was Catholic in the village. And he said, when I first got here in the 1980s, the villagers dropped to their knees in front of me when I first met them, and they kissed my feet, and they kissed my hands. And I asked them why so much reverence, and they said, well, we haven't seen a priest in our village in 50 years. Because if you remember, Joseph Stalin in the 1930s was killing priests, killing religious, and the ones he didn't kill, he shipped off to Siberia to work in gulags. And for 50 years, this little village in Belarus held on to their faith. They held on to the faith. They kept it. How did they keep it? They were creative. Every Sunday, they would bring a missal to Mass, or to the church. There wasn't Mass. They had no priest. They would bring the missal to the church, and they would hand off the missal to each person to pray one paragraph of the Mass all the way through. And then when they got to the words of institution, where the priest normally says, this is my body, this is the chalice of my blood, they went silent. Those were the priest's words. They let that be a silent moment, and then they continued on praying the rest of the Mass. And for confession, they went to the grave of their priest who was buried, who was killed in the 30s. And they would go to his grave, and they would go over to their priest's grave and whisper their sins over his grave, asking for forgiveness for their sins, hoping God would understand their situation and not being able to go to the sacrament of confession. And for 50 years, they held on to that faith, with very little around them to help them along the way in sacraments, but they held on to it, and they still loved the sacraments because their love was true. And when they saw that priest, it was clear. You and I can hold the faith too. It may not be as dire as communism, but it might. Who knows? We do not know with great clarity what the next days will bring. That's in fact part of our struggle right now, the uncertainty, the lack of understanding of even what's going on. But remember, you and I do not have to solve all these problems. Find some interior freedom there. You do not have to solve all the problems that you see. You have but to allow Jesus to save your soul. That is our one responsibility. In the end, that's all we have. We are in need of Jesus' grace and in need of the sacraments and prayer. We will pray and we will work and we will hope in Jesus, and he will get us through, because this is all for Jesus. And even if the worldly battle we're in, we lose or losing, you and I, we have a spiritual battle that we have assurance of victory in Jesus Christ and in his grace. And by your grace, Jesus, we will live and move and have our being.